So these books, the first three that I'm going to be reading from are about these two boys who happen to be brothers. They're kind of the dual protagonists in both of these, in all three of these books, and they're very connected to home, to their dirty river town as they refer to it. The antagonists in this story, as you'll see, are their parents, or in most cases, all adults. What the river told us to do. We watched our father hammer and pound into our front yard's ground a handmade sign that said, in letters big enough for us brothers to read what it said, all the way down from where we were watching, down by the muddy river's muddy shore, house for sale. We'd seen signs like this sign before, sticking up from the front yards of other people's houses, but never in the front of ours. We knew what happened to those people who hammered those signs down into the ground in the fronts of their houses' front yards. After a while, those people with signs out in the fronts of their houses left away from our town and were soon replaced by new people who came to live on the insides of these kinds of houses. Us brothers, we did not want to be one of those people. We didn't want our house to be that kind of a house. Our house, we did not want it to be a house with anybody but us living inside it. But us brothers, we both knew that this, us living in some other house, in some other town, a town without a dirty river running through it, a town without so much mud and smoke and rust. This was what our mother said she wanted for the both of us. We'd heard her say to our father that it was either this house in this dirty river town or it was her that was leaving. Us, our mother's dirty boys, we listened up close. We hoped we might one night hear the sound of footsteps leaving, a door opening, then closing shut. Later on that day, when us brothers saw our father working on the making and the painting and the nailing together of that sign that said on it, "House for Sale," we asked our father what was he doing, then what was it the sign for? We stood by and watched our father's mouth move around to make such sounds as mother and river and town. We watched our father raise up his hand and point with his first finger to where the mill was sitting dark and quiet on the river's muddy shore. But us brothers, we didn't want our ears to hear what it was that our father was wanting us sons to hear. And our eyes, when we looked upriver at the mill, it sitting silent and still, what we saw was the moon rising up big and white and glowing, the mill's rusted smokestacks holding it up. Us brothers said some words back to our father, words such as moon and mud and river and fish. But even these words that were the world to us brothers, these were sounds that our father did not hear. We watched our father drop his head back down so that he could see his right hand holding his hammer. In his other hand, he held a handful of bent back nails. When our father did this with his hands, us brothers did this with ours. We each of us took the other one of us by the hand, and we went with each other down to the river to ask the river, what should we, us brothers, do? When the river told us what to do, we both of us knew it was the only thing we could do. So that night, while our mother and our father were both of them in their room with the lights in their room turned off for sleeping, what we did was we climbed out through our bedroom's window. Only the moon and the stars were watching us that night as we walked out to our father's tool shed and got out his hammers in a box full of his rusty bent back nails. We each of us brothers took up a fistful of nails and a hammer into each one of our hands, and we walked out back to the back of our backyard, back to where there was a telephone pole back there, studded with the chopped off heads of fish. Brother, I said to brother, you can go first. Brother, I told him, give me your hand. Hold your hand up against this pole. Brother did just what I told. We were brothers. We were each other's voice inside our own heads. This might sting, I warned, and then I raised back that hammer. I drove that rusty nail right through brother's hand. Brother didn't even wince or flinch with his body or make with his boy mouth the sound of a brother crying out. Good, brother, I said. I was hammering a second nail into brother's other hand when our father stepped out into the yard. Us, our father's sons, we turned back with our heads toward the sound of our father. We stood like this, waiting to hear what it was that our father was going to say to us brothers next. It was a long few seconds. The sky above the river where the steel mill stood shipwrecked in the mud, it was dark and silent. Somewhere, I was sure, the sun was shining. You boys remember to clean up before you come back in, our father said to us then. Our father turned back his back. Us brothers turned back to face back each other. I raised back the hammer. I lined up that rusted nail.